I'm really excited about our presentation today. Those of you who know Xerces know that we've been, huge supporters for many, many, many years for getting pollinator habitat into the ground in yards, parks, natural areas, and so on. And increasingly, we've recognized that it's really important that those plants also be pollinator safe. And we define that as free of pesticide residues that would be toxic or persistent for pollinators. And certified organic is one way of getting there. Now, when I first heard about certified organic, I naively thought that it meant no pesticides can be used. And I was wrong about that. There are pesticides that are available to certified organic producers, but for the most part, they're not persistent in plants. So you'll learn more about all of that today, and you'll get a chance to hear about Matthew Dell's farm, Treadlight Farm, and his story. And I'm hoping that in hearing his presentation and story that you'll be inspired to seek out and maybe even grow certified organic plants in your own locations. So before I turn it over to Matt, I want to just summarize a few studies. Matt, if you could bring up my slides. There have been a number of studies that have looked at consumer sentiment in this sort of interrelated field of pollinator plants, native plants, and sustainability. And the results are pretty intriguing, as you can see summarized. Basically, home gardeners are starting to really choose pollinator plants in big numbers, 25%. And we're also seeing from studies that consumers who prefer native plants are willing to pay a premium for them, and that frequent plant buyers, those that actually buy the majority of plants, really want sustainable production methods. So what does that premium look like? Well, a study that was done in 2016 found that consumers were willing to pay $1.15 more for bee-friendly production methods. In today's dollars, that's about $1.50 per plant more. And bee-friendly production was more important to the consumers than other nursery sustainability practices. So just wanted to bring this information into our consciousness today as we move forward. And with that, I want to turn it over to Matt Dell, owner and general manager of Treadlight Farm.
Great. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Amber. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm excited to have this conversation with you all about organic certification and ornamental plants. It's something I've been passionate about for a long time. It's something that I've been talking to people about for a long time, mostly with some kind of head nodding or head scratching on the other end. But that sort of is why I think it's so important to keep having this conversation, because people don't associate organic certification with ornamental plants. It's not something that people have really seen out in the marketplace the way they have seen vegetables and food products with organic certified labels on them for many years now at farmers markets or in grocery stores. But I really believe that ornamental plants deserve the same attention and care, both in their production methods and in their effect on the environment. And that's why at our company, Treadlight Farm, we've sort of synthesized these passions for plants that are ecologically appropriate for their ecosystems, so native plants writ large, wherever that may be, and organic growing practices. So with no further ado, I'll jump right into things. So first, a little bit about our company. We are 100% certified organic, so all of our growing areas and production facilities and all of our products are certified organic. There is another option for companies called a split operation, where you could have some certified organic products and facilities and others that are not. We produce cut flowers and native plug trays for wholesale customers. Um, cut flowers is how we got started working with ornamental plants, and it's still our main business. And over the last few years, we've started dipping our toes in the nursery business, and we're really excited about that venture. And it's been growing steadily, and we're hoping to grow it more. With both of those two sort of side-by-side businesses, we grow over 400 species of plant every year. It's about half and half for cut flowers and for our nursery business. The cut flowers are a mix of exotic and native plants. We grow a lot of very familiar cut flowers that you'll get to see a little bit of in this presentation. But flowers, foliage, seed heads, branches, basically anything that can be used in a floral arrangement. For our nursery business, however, we strictly grow plants that are appropriate for planting in our northeastern region. We are located in the Hudson Valley of New York, about 100 miles from New York City. Right along the Rondout River. We're wedged between the Catskill Mountains and the Shawangunk Mountains in the Rondout Valley. We have about 20 acres fenced in with deer fencing that we manage. We grow annuals and biennials on about 6 to 8 acres every year. And then we have 2 acres of perennial plants, both herbaceous and woody. We have about 24,000 square feet of greenhouse space, and that grows every year, it seems. We sprout another one or more. And we have a staff of 5 to 7 people year round. Some of them have been with us for several years. And an additional 6 to 7 seasonal staff during the growing season. And we sell cut flowers and plug trays both from March until November. The plug trays really end at the beginning of October, kind of depending on weather in our region. So for the native plant enthusiasts out there, that little red circle is where we're located. We are in ecoregion 67L. And for those enthusiasts, you know that ecotypic plants are quite the trend these days in the native plant world. So we do a lot of seed collecting in this area and offer ecotypic native plants as some of our nursery products. Here's just a slide of some of the cut flowers that we grow. We have Lisianthus in the top left corner there, or Eustoma grandiflora, which is a very common cut flower and technically a North American native plant, or at least part of the parentage is. And we also have plenty of exotics in here, ranunculus, Icelandic poppies, foxgloves, cosmos, and heirloom chrysanthemums. And of course, dahlia is one of our biggest cut flower crops. And yeah, so we got started back in 2014. It's hard to believe it's already been 10 years, but it just started with me and my wife. We had hand tools and about 3/4 of an acre on a windy hillside at 2,200 feet elevation in Bovina, New York. Not the best place to start a farm business, but it was very beautiful there. And some cut flowers actually really loved the cooler temperatures, and so we could grow great delphinium all summer long. Yeah, so this is sort of what it looked like at the beginning. We went to farmers markets locally, and then kind of broadened out a little more regionally. And before we started this business, we had spent years working on organic vegetable farms. So organic growing practices was really all we knew when we had the kooky idea of starting our own cut flower farm. So we, just applied the same growing practices for our cut flowers. So yeah, we never really had any experience with applying synthetic pesticides or herbicides, and so never had to kind of unlearn any of those habits. After a few years, the business started to grow, and we moved our farm over to a longer term lease in the Hudson Valley. And we built more greenhouses. We started buying tractors and tractor scale equipment. And we became entirely a wholesale business. So we stopped selling retail altogether, which really kind of changed our business overnight when we made that decision. Suddenly, all of our resources went to figuring out how to become a very good wholesale business. So our reputation really started to grow. We had a reputation for high quality, fresh cut flowers, and we also started to grow a lot of native plants, simply because we're always sort of searching for something unique that our customers can't find in the international marketplace for cut flowers. And native plants really fit that bill. There's so many that are really beautiful and function well in arrangements, are things that people have never seen before, but they also offer this other element of coming with a story. So they immediately tell you something about where this plant comes from and its ecological interactions with other organisms in the environment. And so it was a selling point for our customers that they were working with native plants, as well as the fact that all of our stems are certified organic. So here is a picture of some beautiful Silene stellata, one of my favorite new additions last year. So native cut flowers, they, like I said, were a unique thing for our customers, and they sort of kind of already fit the popular aesthetic of the day, looking a little wild and untamed. And then we started noticing all these other benefits of growing native plants. They provided food and habitat for a lot of local insects, and we saw those insects living around our plants. And we thought, how great, this space that had been a conventional agricultural space before, kind of lifeless, now has lots of native bees and other pollinators being supported by what's growing here. And another thing we experienced selling cut flowers was that we got a lot of questions and communications, emails from gardeners, and also when we were selling at farmers markets, we would, all the gardeners would come to our flower stand. They of course loved the flowers, but they also just wanted to talk gardening and talk about the plants that we were offering. And I realized that cut flower trends and garden trends influence one another. So we thought, the more kind of native plants that we're putting out into the world as cut flowers will influence people to want to grow those same plants in their gardens. So over the years, customers and even other growers started asking us for plant starts for some of the things we were growing, and so we thought, hey, why don't we start offering nursery stock as a product kind of on the side. It will help diversify our income stream, and it's something that we're propagation is probably one of the best parts of this job. It's what I get most excited about, is starting things from seed or cuttings. And because we're an organic business, basically all of our cut flowers are produced in-house from seed or from cuttings or divisions. And so we started to gravitate towards that part of the business and thought, hey, let's really go for it and see if we can expand on this. So we started with the idea for certified organic native plug trays. We had been hearing about requests from landscape professionals that to other nurseries that plants be guaranteed to not be sprayed with certain pesticides or neonics. And it occurred to us, well, that's great. And when you ask a nursery for plants that are not sprayed, or if you ask them about their spraying practices, I think most nurseries are probably telling you the truth. I think most people are probably acting ethically, but there's really just no way to know. So we thought, oh, this is a great opportunity for our experience with organic certification to really kind of create a new product, which is native plants that are certified organic. We also didn't, we grow a lot of exotic plants for our cut flower business, but we didn't want to put any more into the landscape. So we knew from the beginning that our nursery business would be just about native plants that are appropriate for our region. We thought the organic certification could kind of set us apart from other companies doing the same thing. And we were really excited that our customers could be totally assured that our plants were free of any synthetic pesticide, herbicide, fertilizer, or growing medium. And then we also, as we started developing some wholesale customers and selling to other nurseries, we realized, oh, well, this, we're not selling retail, but and it would be challenging for a retail nursery to sell organic plants if they're not producing them all in-house. But for nurseries that buy in plants and pot them up, this could pave the way for those plants to start offering organic products. So why certified organic and not just naturally grown? There are other certifications out there. Naturally grown is one. Why do we think that it's important that companies that are growing things organically actually go through with the certification? Well, when it comes to organic growing practices, I think there are probably other Xerces webinars that can speak better to this, but we are in a time of very serious climate and environmental crises. Extinction rates for insects and birds are very disconcerting. So we really believe that it's important that more plants that are not treated with systemic pesticides and inorganic fertilizers are make it into the marketplace. It's also a way to guarantee that for our staff and for our customers that all of our products are safe for the environment, that they don't contain any polluting chemicals, no herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, or in cut flowers, we don't use any chemical preserving solutions or holding solutions. We don't use controlled release fertilizers because those generally are not allowed in organic production. And those tiny little prills contribute microplastics to the environment. And we also, being in the cut flower world, we heard lots of anecdotal experience from wholesalers in New York City and elsewhere that people who've been working in the trade for a long time had strange stories of illnesses from handling cut flowers soaked in preservative and fungicide. We just wanted to protect our staff and our customers from that. And then we also really like the idea of organic certification because it has a defined set of rules and regulations for everyone to follow. And maybe most importantly, it has verifiability and accountability baked into the system. So it's hard for certified organic businesses to lie. They have to show receipts. They have to allow inspectors annually onto their premises to make sure that the practices they're following and the products they're using are what they say they're using. And then there's an enforcement element to organic certification that has real teeth. I think other certifications that are out there maybe don't carry the same heft, the same weight of financial and legal penalties if you're caught lying. And then lastly, I have down here, and this kind of speaks to Sharon's slide, can charge a premium, ? For me, that's a little bit to be determined yet. In theory, yes, just like vegetable growers, we should be able to charge a little bit of a premium for our certified organic ornamental plants. However, because that industry is essentially non-existent, the organic ornamental plant industry, people don't know to ask for it. And if people don't know to ask for it, they don't know that it's something that they could or should want or could and should pay a little more for. So our prices are very much in line with conventional growers. And I think that's probably the way it needs to start out. I don't think that high prices is necessarily going to reel in new customers for a product that they've never heard of before. So for our cut flowers, yeah, our prices are at the higher end of average. And then for our nursery products, we try to match what we see conventional, non-certified organic growers, simply because we want to gain customers. I think it's sort of a if you build it, they will come mentality. I think there had to be organic products out in the world for a while first before people knew to buy organic vegetables or to expect that they have a higher price. So now we can get into some of the finer points of organic growing practices. These are tools and methods and practices that have been important for us over the years. And the first one I have on there is intentional. It is, for me, the most important tool in our toolbox for growing things organically. And that is crop diversity. And the simple logic of that is that if you grow a wide array of crops, it's very unlikely that a pest or disease is going to wipe out all of them or even a significant amount of them. Something may fail, but you'll have lots of other products that won't. So cover crops is the next one. That's more for our in-ground growing of cut flowers. We use mixed species cover crops, and we rotate our cash crop growing space every year. So the same soil does not receive a cash crop every year, but every other year. And in between, we use mixed species cover crops. So that could be oats and peas, rye and vetch, sun hemp and Sudan grass, at least 2 species every time. Next most important is, this should maybe be number 2 really, is good cultural practices, keeping weed pressure down, spacing plants out so that they have good airflow, which is really important for mildews, and moisture management, also very important for mildews and keeping pest populations down. Crop rotation, sort of already mentioned. Beneficial insect predators. We buy a lot of beneficial insects. We have not yet started growing our own banker plants for beneficial insects, but we hope to get started with that this year. Movable high tunnels. This is something this is a tool that vegetable growers use, and it's great for growing in the ground. Basically, you can grow a crop in a high tunnel and then move the whole high tunnel. And the benefits of that are that, when you have a stationary greenhouse, you get buildup of salts in the soil from fertilizers. You get buildup of pest pressure or diseases in the soil. And so the way people typically tackle that with stationary greenhouses is they take the plastic off of the greenhouse, or they take the glazing off periodically, maybe every few years, and let the rain kind of flush out the soil and just let the kind of elements in to reset things. But with a movable tunnel, you don't have to lose that production period. You can simply move the high tunnel. Sometimes we move on to crops that have been growing outside already. Sometimes we move on to bare ground that had a cover crop in it, and then we dry it out with the tunnel over it, like in the winter time, and then till it up and plant into it. But this way, with movable high tunnels, you can cover crop ground that you use for indoor tunnel production without losing production time, as well as getting the benefits of having the outdoor elements on that same piece of ground. We also use organically approved pesticides and fertilizers. We use fertigation, both through sprinklers and through drip irrigation. For our container stock, something that has basically done away with any kind of green algae growth on the tops of containerized plants, is we've begun mulching with parboiled rice hulls. So that keeps weeds down in our container plants. Seeds that blow in don't germinate as easily in rice hulls, and it also keeps down any algae growth. And then the last bit is letting predator habitat grow tall nearby. So if you come to our farm, it is not a perfectly manicured place. And that's by design, that's by intent. We do leave kind of driving lanes and walking areas a little. We mow high, so we don't, mow it, razor short down to the ground. And that's because we want to leave some habitat, especially small flowered forbs for beneficial insects to thrive nearby our growing areas. And so next we'll have some slides that just kind of illustrate some of these practices. So here's a shot of, I think this is oats and peas from this last year, just growing in this block. So that probably winter killed recently, and it will be turned over in the spring. And this actually followed a crop from this year. So we're not even growing in this space next year. We'll put down more cover crop next year. So this particular block will get a year and change of cover cropping before it sees another cash crop. Here we are showing insect habitat in between our growing spaces, our beds. This is a practice that we used for many years. We would basically sow a cover crop in late fall or early spring, sometimes even in the winter if we had a warm spell in February and the ground was dry enough, we would sneak in and do some cover crop. But basically, we would cover crop with rye, vetch, and some white clover. And in the springtime, as that stuff was starting to take off, we would strip till beds into it so that we had these kind of grassy growing, or these grassy lanes between every bed. And that gave, we only did that for certain crops, our really high value crops like dahlias pictured here. We grow a lot of dahlias, and they really benefit from airflow. And for harvesting, it's really nice to have a grassy area to place your stems so that they don't come into contact with the soil and get dirty or pick up, bacteria that'll transfer to the water in buckets. And yeah, it just makes harvesting really, really easy for our staff. And then another benefit was that, we would keep this mowed with a riding mower throughout the season. And so we would be shooting little grass and clover trimmings onto the beds all season long. And dahlias are a plant that take all season to grow. You plant them in the spring, you start harvesting them late August, and they go all the way up until frost. So having that added fertility throughout the growing season was really nice. And it would sort of mulch the shoulders of the beds as well. Here we can see a card of some beneficial insects. I think this was assassin beetles, but we also use parasitic wasps for aphid control, lacewings and pirate bugs as well. And then this last year, we started using nematodes for mealybugs, or like root aphids, in some of our containerized stock. And here, so all of our high tunnels are 30 feet by 96 feet, which is kind of the standard large size. And here, this is just a video of us moving one of these high tunnels. So we're moving onto ground that you can see there's some dead grass there. We had a oats and peas cover crop in that ground, and then we mowed it down. And we wanted to dry the soil out for planting in the fall. So we moved this tunnel over when we were done with whatever was in there before, put 2 tractors onto it, and dragged it onto a new space that had been cover cropped, had been exposed to the elements all year long. So presumably was free of major pests and diseases. Here's just a satellite image that I took this morning, actually, showing our movable tunnels. So you can see these 3 buildings that are sort of in a funny triangular configuration. They have these kind of bare blocks. They're each situated somewhere in these rows of bare blocks, and that's our movable tunnel area. So we have 3 blocks for each tunnel every year. And so we try to squeeze in 3 crops every year to these tunnels. Some years it's just 2. Some years it's 4. It kind of depends on timing of different things. And so, yeah, you can see that most of these blocks are exposed to the elements for most of the year. And so we can do things like cover crop them. We can easily add compost with tractors and work up the ground with tractors, and get things planted, and then just move a tunnel over them. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about challenges for ornamental plant growers. And I would like to dispel some myths. Here you can see some aphids growing on some of our heirloom chrysanthemums. Aphids are our main pest. Aphids and rodents are actually our main pests. We grow a lot of things from corns in our tunnels, so rodents really love to make a feast of those. We use mechanical traps for rodents, pretty simple. But aphids are a lot trickier. Aphids take scouting, and once we see them, we start applying organically approved pesticides for kind of the duration of the plant's life cycle until maybe about 6 weeks before flowering, and then we'll start applying lots of beneficial insects. So for ornamental plant growers who want to get into organic growing, these are some of the issues that you're going to be facing as well. Pests and diseases. Look, even conventional growers face issues with pests and diseases, so this is not really new. You're just going to have to think about shifting strategies. And you might have to make some other hard choices, and we'll get into those in a second. Fertility management will also be a challenge. No kind of set it and forget it control release fertilizers. You'll have to think more about kind of slow release fertilizers like compost and organic matter, or also fertilizing regularly with fertigation. Record keeping is a really important one. Hopefully most growers are already good about record keeping because it's just good for business. But if you're not, then this is something you're going to have to get good at for organic production, because at your annual inspection, you have to produce records, and those records have to reflect what the inspector sees happening at your farm. So there's a couple of tests that they run. You have to basically show something that you've sold, so produce an invoice, and trace that thing all the way back to the original seed that you bought, or the plants that you bought, and everything that happened to it in between. So any amendments or pesticides that were applied, the growing medium that you used, where the seed came from originally. You have to show the invoice. And then you had to have records for when the planting happened, and if the plant was transported at any point from one place to another, from one facility to another, you need to keep those records. Diversifying if you rely on a small number of crops. Yeah, I can't emphasize the diversification enough. I think if you are a grower who depends entirely on a small number of crops, then organic certification might not be for you, simply because you're going to have to do whatever it takes to save those crops when your livelihood depends on it. And now we can, here's one issue that confounded me for a while, and I've heard some resistance from other growers about organic certification because of phytosanitary regulations. Is this an issue? I'm not sure. I think the jury's out on this one. As the best that I can tell, and after speaking with my certifiers, the best that they can tell is that that according to this rule, in section 205.204 of the National Organic Program Regulations, it says that seeds, annual seeds, and planting stock treated with prohibited substances may be used to produce an organic crop when the application of the materials is a requirement of federal or state phytosanitary regulations. So what that means to me is that as long as you are doing everything to produce an organic crop, even if a plant inspector says you have to treat this plant with X, Y, or Z pesticide before shipping it to X, Y, or Z state, that's okay. You're still offering a certified organic plant. You would have to keep records of those requirements and regulations from whatever agency. But other than that, I don't think it presents any real issue. And then there will be some other added costs for becoming a certified organic business. Certification costs money, no doubt about that. But for anybody who has a decently sized payroll, the cost of certification is pretty small compared to other costs of running a farm or nursery business. You might have to switch some of your products, like your potting media or your fertilizers, to things that are OMRI approved. You might need to pay for more labor for you spend time training people, spend more time monitoring, because monitoring is a big part of managing things organically. A lot of organic rules say that you can only, like, for depending on the pesticide, you can only apply it once you've seen the pest, basically. You can't kind of apply it prophylactically. So that means monitoring. And then fertilizer application. If you're not using control release fertilizers, you're going to have to fertilize more, and that will cost money. More beneficial insects. If you don't already use a lot of them, you'll need to start, and that will cost money. And then for businesses that do a lot of cuttings, you're not going to be allowed to use rooting hormone. I haven't found an OMRI approved rooting hormone. Maybe if somebody else has, they can let me know after this. But that means you'll probably have lower strike rates. Not that you won't be able to produce cuttings. We produce tens of thousands of cuttings every year. All of our heirloom chrysanthemums are grown from cuttings. We grow a lot of dahlias from cuttings. And we don't use any rooting hormone. So it's for a lot of plants, rooting hormone will improve your strike rate, but that doesn't mean that the rooting hormone is absolutely necessary. Learning curve losses. Yeah, so you will learn which plants are susceptible to which pests if you don't already know, and managing them will require a learning curve, and that will bear some costs. Any new equipment or infrastructure, if you're a farmer growing ornamental plants and you're transitioning to organic, then you're probably going to have to use more cultivation equipment or buy more cultivation equipment to keep weeds down. And you may have to sacrifice crops that prove too costly under organic management. If you're a really diversified operation, that's probably not the end of the world. Like I said earlier, if your business mainly relies on a small number of species for your income, then that may not be a sacrifice you're willing to make. Okay, a couple more myths. Finding organic planting stock. So retail nurseries. If you want to manage your plants organically and sell organic plants, but think, I can't do this because I have to buy in organic plants, that's not necessarily true. You are not required to buy in those plants. For perennials, you're not required to buy in those plants if they're not available. You have to buy organic plants if you find them and if they're available. But if they're not available commercially, then you can buy in conventionally grown plants. But they have to be managed organically for 1 year before you can resell them as organic. And then for people starting plants from seed, it's also a myth that you have to use organic seed in organic production. That's not true. There's almost no organic seed available for ornamental plants. But you have to document that you looked for organic seed, which is not as hard as it sounds. You basically check catalogs with your normal suppliers and see if there's an organic option. And if there is, you buy it. If there isn't, you note for that plant that there was no organic option available. But there is a further rule, which is that seed can't be treated and it can't be GMO, and there's no sort of exceptions for those. But you can definitely produce organic crops from conventionally grown seed, as long as there was no organic option for that seed when you purchased it. So here are a few organic products we use ourselves. We use our growing media. We use various different things. We're changing this year. We've used a few different brands in the past, but there's a lot out there now. Fertilizers, we use fish emulsion. For fertigation, we actually use organic. And for a granular fertilizer, kind of side dressing, we use Crayers 543. We use plenty of compost for things that will spend more time in pots or that benefit from higher fertility, and worm castings. For pesticides, these are mainly the things we've used in the past: Impede, Azagard, Millstop, Pyganic, Cease. And then for like root diseases like Fusarium and things like that, Actinovate and Root Shield. And like I said, we mulch our containerized plants if they're going to spend a long time in there with parboiled rice hulls. So any growers interested in reaching out to local certifying organizations who want to get started should reach out to local certifying organizations. There are cost share programs out there, both for transitioning your business, which could take a few years depending on what's been applied to your soils in the past. And there's also a cost share for certification, I think offered by the USDA, but definitely in various states, there's a cost share offered. Which could amount to several $1,000s. So it's definitely worth looking into. If you're not already applying good record keeping practices, you should start, and then start looking at your amendments and soils and see if you need to think about trialing organic alternatives and seeing how they could work for your operation. And that's it. Thank you all so much. Excited to get into some question and answer time now. And oh, actually, Sharon, you have, before that, you have a slide that you wanted to.
Yes, that's right. Thanks. I just wanted to mention that there was a bill introduced into the US Congress about a year and a half ago that would create a new USDA pollinator-friendly plant label. This legislation was co-sponsored by several senators, but hasn't gotten beyond that really at this point. So this isn't something that's like going to happen immediately, but I wanted you all to know about it. Essentially, the bill calls for a voluntary certification program. This is not mandatory in any way. It's be only for growers who wanted to go this route. In order to qualify, any plants carrying this label must be native to the US. That's what the bill calls for now. Generally follow basically the bill language says that growers would follow the US organic program standards, which kind of in a nutshell means, of course, that synthetic pesticides and synthetic fertilizers are generally not allowed. Matt went over a couple of exceptions and other rules. And so plants meeting this, if a grower was part of this and the plant met those standards, they would get a USDA pollinator-friendly label. We're interested in a couple of things, and I think Amber's going to bring up a couple of polls. So we're interested in your thoughts on this, and we're also interested in who's in the room today. So Amber, maybe you can launch both of those. And if you all would be so kind as to kind of let us know where you're coming from, who you are, and it'll be interesting to know who's here today.
Yes, I just launched the first one, so we'll give folks a couple minutes to let us know who's in the room. we have some growers, some retailers, a lot of folks here that buy plants for home, a couple park managers as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for letting us know kind of what aspect of this you're coming from. And a second thing that we wanted to ask before we go to questions, and we do have some great questions, so we definitely want to get to that. But what do you think about this voluntary certification bill? If you could let us know what you think, and if you like it or dislike it, essentially is what we're asking. And then if you have time and can take the time to just briefly say what do you like or dislike about it, then that would be helpful to us as well. While you're doing that, I want to say thank you to all of the people who came today. We're not ending, so don't leave just because I said that. But I also wanted to thank all of Xerces members, supporters, Material Petrie Foundation, who helped support our work. So without your support and the support of various funders, we wouldn't be able to bring you these kinds of interesting presentations. I want to thank Matt too for all the time that he's taking out of his running his farm and running his nursery to come and talk to all of us today about how he's doing that. And with that, maybe we can end the poll and then present that briefly and then move on to questions.
All right. Definitely see most people like it. At least of the percentage of folks here in attendance. All right, did you want to move on to questions?
Yes, let's move on to questions. Thanks everybody for taking the time for those polls.
Yeah, thanks. Great. Great to see who's here and that people are excited about potentially a plant labeling act in the future. In the absence of a labeling act, I think obviously for anyone who saw this presentation, I think that organic certification is a great stand-in for any growers who want to be able to kind of guarantee to their clients and customers that plants are grown organically. So I guess we should take a look at some of these questions. I'll just start at the top, or at least what I see is the top. Yeah, it's the earliest one. So what issues did NOFA New York grapple with while applying largely in-ground food standards to containerized or ornamental crops? I don't think they necessarily had any issues. They sort of apply the same lens, whether it's a food crop or an ornamental crop. They're asking the same questions. They're looking for the same, OMRI approved substances and materials. So I'm not sure that much is different from their perspective. Then next question is, if seed is sourced from a non-certified organic crop, can the then germinated crop be certified organic? Yes, absolutely. The only seed that can't be used, but I should qualify that. It has to follow a few fairly simple rules. One is that there not be organic seed available commercially at the time of buying your seed. So if there is organic seed available commercially, you have to buy that, no matter what the cost of that seed. Cost is not a reason for buying conventional seed in the organic program. Only availability. So if it's not available, then you can buy conventional seed. And then the other really important rule to follow is that it can't be treated seed and it can't be GMO seed. Next question is, you said that you till. Isn't that being discouraged due to the negative impact on soil structure and beneficial soil microbes? Yes, we do till. And yes, it is also discouraged for its impact on soil living organisms. However, it is a bit of a balancing act. On a large scale, or like once you're at a tractor scale for production, you don't have a lot of options for mulching really large areas, and mulching comes with its own challenges. And for example, if you have a really wet growing season and your land is covered in mulch, that soil is never going to dry out. Your plants are going to die from a lack of oxygen in the soil. It's just going to stay totally saturated. So mulching is challenging on a large scale. There are mulches available on a large scale, but they tend to be plastic based, either ethanol based plastics that are biodegradable, which don't really break down very quickly and leave a lot of kind of trashy residue in the ground for a long time, or straight up plastic mulches, which a lot of organic growers use, depending on their soil types, and that they generally are using tillage first to keep the soil free of perennial weeds. Yeah, I think it's just currently with the current equipment that's available, and I haven't seen any equipment that would lead me to believe otherwise. I think once you're at a tractor scale, it's really hard to get away from some amount of tillage. The one exception actually is, and this is an interesting factoid, is that most no-till farming is actually happening with GMO corn and soybeans, organisms that have been engineered to withstand really intense herbicides. So in those places, people can, after harvesting the crop, can spray herbicide and reseed in that same ground without having to till it up. But there's obviously a very serious trade-off in that situation, I think, with the amount of herbicide that has to be applied. For annual cut flowers, are you only certifying dahlias? No, we're certifying everything that we grow. What are the challenges of growing plug crops like Lisianthus, poppies, etc., as certified organic? Oh, we have a flower person here clearly, because Lisianthus is a very challenging crop to grow organically. In fact, there's no commercially available seed that can be used for organic production of Lisianthus in this country. And that's because all of Lisianthus has extremely tiny seed. It's like dust, basically. And all of the Lisianthus seed that's available commercially in the United States is coated with a pellet coating to make it easier to handle. And the company or companies that do that pelleting will not disclose, because it's proprietary, what they put in that seed coating. And so organic certifiers have not allowed that seed to be used for organic production because it may contain a substance that is prohibited. So in order to grow Lisianthus organically in this country, at least for my certifier, and there may be like a little bit of discretion between certifiers on this, I actually had to start importing raw Lisianthus seed from the Netherlands. So I called around and to companies in various countries to try to find somebody who I could communicate with, who could sell me raw unpelleted Lisianthus seed. And I finally found one in the Netherlands. And so that's how we got around Lisianthus. But everything else has been straightforward. Yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to say we had another question related to that, and I wanted to sort of jump on there with a similar topic.
Okay.
Following up on the organic seed question, you just touched on this. What if local organic seed is not available organically? Say organic seed is available from a distant or undesirable ecosystem.
Well, I would say that, so I think the question there is about wanting to produce maybe ecotypes, like a native plant ecotypes from a specific place. and maybe that seed is available organically from some other location, from some other ecotype, but is not available organically for the ecotype that you want. I would say that for a native plant nursery, these are essentially two different plants. If the you can choose non-organic seed if it's a totally different product, if it's a different variety or a different type, even if it's the same species of plant. Like just because there is an organic zinnia seed, say the variety is Benneries and it's organic. Say I don't want to grow Benneries, I want to grow Oklahoma. It's the same, which is a different zinnia variety. It's the same species, but it's a different type. And so I'm not required to buy that organic Bennery seed. I can grow the conventional Oklahoma seed. I hope that makes sense for everybody. But I think that if you're thinking about native plant ecotypes, you could say that this is a different type of plant, and that should justify it to your certifier that it's important that this be this ecotype, and there's no organic option for this ecotype seed.
Thanks for clarifying that. I think that makes sense. We have a lot of great questions coming in though, and I do want to make sure that we can try and answer a variety of them before time. And I just also want to reiterate to folks, if you have to jump off, that's okay. This will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel. So just going to bounce around a little more and feed you a few more questions if you're up for it.
Yeah, sure.
We have a question here from someone. Do you face any issues from nearby growers who do not grow organically?
Nope. My direct neighbor is an organic grower. I don't have anybody within, a quarter mile, half a mile who's spraying any serious pesticides or herbicides. So I have not had that issue, no.
Well, great. Okay, speaking of pesticides, we have a couple similar pesticide related questions, so trying to group them together. Someone else wants to know, what are the criteria for pesticides that organic growers can use? Why those pesticides?
The pesticides that are approved for organic use generally, I think, derive from products that are naturally found. So it's not, like pyganic, for example, is a pyrethroid that is naturally found in chrysanthemums. So that comes from a plant. It's something synthesized that is produced from a plant, as opposed to something that's totally synthetically engineered by humans.
And if I could just add in on this question, the Xerces Society about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, put together a couple of fact sheets and resources on organic pesticides, and with a focus on the bee toxicity. I want to clear up any misperceptions. It's not necessarily that all organic pesticides are automatically safe for bees. But what we do know is that they tend not to be very persistent. And so when you're taking plants to plant out into a natural landscape or your yard, we're pretty focused on whether there's going to be residues that persist after you plant those in wherever is going to be their home. And so that level of persistence is an important consideration. What I can do, in case you're interested in those resources, is put the links in the chat for you. If you're interested in looking at those, we have sort of a shorter fact sheet summary, and then there's a longer, like 8-page document if you really want to dive into the details.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. That's really great information. I totally agree. Not all organic pesticides are necessarily safe for pollinators or for people. Every time we apply a pesticide, even in all of our organic pesticides, masks on, gloves on, all the personal protective equipment, no one else around. So we follow the same protocols as if it was a really incredibly toxic synthetic substance. And we also try to apply at times when there are no pollinators or fewer pollinators potentially impacted. And we also don't spray, I never mentioned this, I should have in the presentation, but we also actually don't use any sprays outdoors. We use them all exclusively inside of our greenhouses. So that hopefully also limits the impact of these organic pesticides on any beneficial insects and pollinators.
Great. Thank you so much for clarifying that, both of you. And I do see Sharon, yes. Thank you for putting those fact sheets up. All right, we have time for a couple more questions. You did answer this one in your presentation. Some folks wanted to know about what beneficial insect predators you use. But then related to that, someone else wants to know, do you try to release predators that are native to your specific area so they don't negatively impact local native local native predator populations? Can you speak to that?
That is a great question and something I've been wondering about myself the last couple of years. No, I am not about to start producing my own insects, so I rely on what predatory insects are available commercially. And as far as I can tell, there's no real consideration by the companies doing that about where those insects are native to. I will say though that generally the insects that I've purchased, it's always advertised to me that they will not sustain a population locally where I am on their own. So they will not be able to persist in the environment, and I'll have to rebuy them, which I'm sure is good for the companies I'm buying them from. That I have to rebuy them every year. So no, but I think this is a great question. I think really all organic producers can do currently, without some other insect producing companies to really dig into this. In the absence of that, I think just providing lots of natural habitat near your growing areas for increasing local populations of beneficial native insects.
Yes, absolutely. All right, another question. Do you keep dahlia tubers in the ground after the growing season? Are there any challenges associated with underground pests? And if so, how do you prevent that?
No, we don't. We dig them up every year. Our soils are too heavy and it is too cold most winters for us to leave them in the ground. So yeah, too much cold moisture around the tubers, they will guaranteed they will rot every year. I've never seen one come back up outdoors. So we dig them up and we deal with it. We deal with an above ground pest. Well, I guess both above and below ground in rodents who like to eat our dahlia tubers.
Yeah. All right, time for just a few more questions here. Another growing question. Do your cover crops always include a legume?
Not always, but often. They tend to pair nicely with aggressive kind of canopy closing plants like grasses and small grains.
Good to know. Thank you. All right, then I think final question and maybe some final thoughts here. Someone else wants to know if there are organic proofed pesticides that you avoid using. You alluded to this a little bit in your prior question, but any last recommendations there perhaps?
Any that we avoid using? I generally assume that any pesticide I'm applying is going to be not pollinator friendly. The ones that I listed, they are not species specific. In fact, none of the organically approved pesticides that I use, except for some of the bacterias for root diseases and are fairly species specific, but generally for insect pests, the pesticides that I've used have all been kind of general insecticides that will affect many insects. So I just presume that they're bad for any pollinators. So I know that's sort of non-answer
Yeah.
answer that.
It sounded like you used kind of a temporal restriction that 6 weeks before flowering, you don't apply any pesticides. And you also only use them in the greenhouses and not outside, right? If that's kind
Yes.
of the way that you avoid risk primarily, is it?
Yep, yep. And the main reason for stopping the pesticide application before, 6 weeks before flowering is because at that point we start buying beneficial insects, and these things would sort of be working at odds. So I don't want to spray in the insects that I just spent a lot of money on bringing in to help control the aphid populations. And it's primarily aphids and thrips that we're looking at.
Yes. All right. Well, I want to just give you a second here if you have any other closing remarks. Otherwise, I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today, and give a big thank you to both Matt and Sharon.
Yeah, thank you everybody for your questions and for being interested in organic ornamental plant production.
Yeah, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Matt, for taking the time to do this again. It's really so interesting to hear about how you run your nursery. I'm wishing you well with your native plant plug production as part of that. And really interesting to hear about all the principles that you follow, diversification, moving your tunnels, everything that you mentioned, all so important. And Amber, thank you so much for helping us today. So great to have you, really competent and professional assistance through all of this as well.
You're very welcome.
All
right. All right. Thank you all. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Sharon.
Bye.
Thanks, Amber.